In 1981, a group of men in their 70s were invited to a retreat where they were supposed to pretend that they were much younger than they were. Their surroundings were filled with reminders of their youth, and they were there for a few days. By the end of the retreat, their bodies were physically younger in addition to actually feeling younger. They stood up taller, they were more mobile, more flexible, their sight and hearing got better, their memory was better, their cognition was improved. In other words, their biological age actually decreased. And this is actually not that unheard of if you're familiar with the difference between a biological age and a person's actual age. It's actually pretty easy to modify your biological age to be younger or older depending on the kind of lifestyle that you have. I actually recently read a study about a group of women who were given a bunch of lifestyle interventions, and by the end of a few weeks, their biological age decreased by up to 11 years. But what about the study in which a group of housemaids were split up into two groups? And they told one of the groups about how their job actually burns calories, whereas the other one was a control group, and the women who were told that their job consumes more calories actually lost weight, even when controlling for how much exercise they actually did. Or what about the studies that show that when doctors give hope to patients and get them to expect that they'll do better, they actually get better compared to the patients that are not given hope? Or the study in which a group of patients were given a sham knee surgery in which basically nothing was actually done to their knee, they were just cut up and stitched back up. And those who were given the placebo surgery had no actual difference in their mobility compared to ones that actually had the surgery, even 6 years later. The placebo effect is a phenomenon that researchers noticed when they saw that giving patients sugar pills or saline injections instead of the treatment, meaning a placebo, actually had a positive effect on them. When a person thinks that a placebo is a treatment that's going to have a positive effect on them, they actually get better, and their body actually believes it. It's not just in their mind. For example, when you give patients a placebo painkiller, they don't just report having less pain, they actually produce natural endogenous painkillers. There was also a study in which they gave participants a placebo Parkinson's drug, and the participants actually produced higher amounts of the neurotransmitter dopamine that's lacking in Parkinson's disease. The placebo effect is very powerful. It has an effect not only on the way that we think about things, but also our body itself. Now, the other half of this coin is the nocebo effect, which is when somebody believes that a placebo is something that will harm them, and their belief that it's harmful actually makes that innocuous thing harmful. For example, there was a study in which asthma patients were given an inhaler that had nothing irritating in it, but when they were told it did contain an irritant, many actually experienced asthma symptoms or a full-blown asthma attack. In a different study, kids who were allergic to poison ivy were rubbed with a leaf that was harmless, and when they believed that it was poison ivy, they actually had an allergic reaction, versus when they told other kids that it was a harmless plant and really was poison ivy, those kids didn't have the same reaction. We also know from studies that when you tell patients about a possible side effect of a medication, they tend to report having that side effect more, sometimes even before taking the medication. That's why some people, for instance, who are told that chemotherapy is going to make them sick, get nauseous before they even have the chemotherapy. So when does the placebo effect work versus not? The most important thing is the placebo effect works when that person thinks it's going to work. Optimists respond more to the placebo effect, whereas pessimists respond more to the nocebo effect. Why? Because the placebo effect hinges on optimists' powerful belief that things are going to be good, while the nocebo effect hinges on pessimists' powerful belief that things are going to be bad. It's the belief that matters, and we know that people tend to want to confirm their beliefs. Placebos can even work if a person knows that something is a placebo, so long as they know about the placebo effect. It's the belief that matters. And for this reason, if you want to use the placebo effect to your advantage, you need to know how powerful it is. That's the whole point of this video, to convince you of the power of the placebo effect so that you can use it to your advantage. People who tend to be more suggestible also tend to have more an effect with the placebo, because suggestible people tend to be more willing to truly absorb a belief without questioning it too much, whereas people who are very critical in their thinking, they might not be as willing to believe in something, and therefore if their belief's not as strong, the placebo effect's not going to really take action. This is actually why it's also easier for people who are more suggestible to fall into hypnosis, because their defenses are down. It's easier to get into the unconscious, and what matters with our beliefs is not just the conscious belief, it's also the unconscious belief. Now, there is a limit to the placebo effect. The placebo effect is often not as effective as actual forms of treatment, and there's a a limit to how much you can use the placebo effect to actually change your life and your body. I think of it kind of like a rubber band. If you think of a rubber band, you can stretch it out pretty far, but there's going to be a limit to how far. Obviously, you can't stretch it out to be the entire length of the US. So for instance, maybe you can clear up your skin by thinking that a medication you're taking is a treatment even though it's a placebo, but you're not going to be able to completely change the structure of your face. The placebo effect works within reason. It works pretty well, but there is a limit to it. But as long as we have the power to stretch out that rubber band as far as possible, why not take advantage of that? Now, before I go into how I use the placebo effect to improve my life, let me just explain how the placebo effect actually works. Like I said, what counts with the placebo effect is the belief itself, the belief that it's going to work, conviction in a certain outcome. When you repeat a belief enough times, over time it hardens in your unconscious and it turns into an attitude. For example, if you have a belief that everything's going to be okay, day after day after day, over time that's going to build up into an optimistic attitude that's very hard for somebody to take away from you. You gotta understand that the brain, by and large, doesn't understand the difference between real and imagined. This is why athletes and musicians actually show improvement in their performance and in their strength with just a visualization exercise rather than actually working out or actually practicing that instrument. Now, of course, you reap the most benefits if you do both, if you visualize and also practice. So what we visualize becomes real in our brains neurologically, and the more we repeat it, the more those neural pathways harden into an attitude. And it becomes not only emotionally, but biologically real as well. So I do think that a lot of the placebo effect is visualizing a positive future and pairing it with a very strong belief that hardens into an attitude over time. So here are a bunch of ways that I use the placebo effect to my advantage for my physical and mental health and success and all of that. And this honestly should not be as controversial as it is through optimism. I have this general steadfast belief that no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. When unexpected things come up, when there are changes in my plans, I have this belief that I will be able to overcome it because I know that I'm a resilient person. I always bounce back. I'm gonna be just fine. And I think a lot of this has to do with listening to my grandma's stories, asking her about her childhood, her upbringing, her youth. She underwent a lot. I mean, she lived through the Second World War and the aftermath of it, in which she saw some very traumatic things happening to her parents. She has lost her husband of over 60 years, her sister who was younger than her parents. She lived through the communist regime, through lack, through poverty. She used to make her own toys when she was little. They didn't even have something like dolls. And through it all, she kept it moving forward. She understood that no matter what life throws her way, she can handle it. She can overcome it. And I think that really impacted me and my attitude on life. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you, there are definitely times when I freak out and I catastrophize about things. But it's almost always followed up with, I'm going to be just fine. Because I realized that some of the most stressful and even traumatic things that happened in my life, for the most part, had a silver lining to them. And maybe it's not that they were overall more positive than negative, but I choose to focus on the silver lining because it's an advantage to me. And the research supports that optimists live longer. Optimists are happier. Optimists fare better with illness prognosis. Why wouldn't I adopt a belief that everything is going to turn out fine if it might actually turn out more fine because I believe that? For example, I'm actually moving to another country soon. And it's very stressful. There are a lot of moving pieces. There are a lot of things that I'm sure are going to go wrong when I least expect it. But I keep going into it with the mindset of, it's going to be okay. I'm adaptive, I'm hardworking, I will figure it out. Even if the worst case scenario happens, I will figure out a workaround. It's a very unpopular thing to say in this day and age because I think Gen Z is very pessimistic and they get very angry when they hear that other people don't agree with their worldview, including their negative worldview. And maybe they're right that the world is such a negative place. But like I always ask you guys, would you rather be right or happy? Would you rather be right or healthy? Would you rather be right or successful? Would you rather be right or have a happy relationship? In this case, would you rather be right that the world is such a terrible place, or would you rather use the placebo effect to your advantage? And you can also use this sort of optimism and hope to help other people. When other people are going through a tough time, when they undergo a difficult diagnosis or anything of the sort, you can instill in them hope, and that is scientifically shown to actually help them. When somebody else is struggling and they're afraid of the future, if you induce in them the placebo effect by reassuring them that you're going to be just fine, everything is going to work out for you, you might actually help that be the case. And now some of you guys might be thinking, well, isn't that delusional? If someone has a terminal illness and you tell them that they're going to be just fine? Yeah, it might be delusional. It might also work. So would you rather they be realistic about their situation or they possibly survive it? I know if I had like 3 to 6 months to live and somebody made me optimistic, I would much rather live my last 3 to 6 months alive optimistically. Now, the second way that I use the placebo effect to my advantage, and this ties into the visualizing a positive future for yourself and really believing that it's going to happen to you, is I do something called a mind movie. This is a technique that I learned from Dr. Joe Dispenza about a year ago, and look, my thoughts on Dr. Joe Dispenza are very mixed, very ambivalent. I've decided not to talk about him after all because I do think he helps a lot of people in some ways. And this is actually my biggest takeaway from his book, Becoming Supernatural, was the mind movie idea. Basically, the way I implement it is I downloaded a bunch of Pinterest boards of my dream life or a specific goal that I have, and I pair that with an extremely moving song. And then I watch that with headphones about 3 times in a row every day or so. And I truly let myself feel the joy and gratitude that I'm going to feel when my future life comes to fruition. I'm not joking when I say that I literally bring myself to tears almost every single time I do this. I truly feel how it's going to feel when I have these things in my life. There's one particular goal that I have that I'm not going to share because, I don't like to share things before I execute them, that I believe with like 99.9% conviction is going to happen. It's a very ambitious thing, but I'm so sure that it's going to happen for me. And when it comes true, maybe I'll share with you guys what that thing was to show you that it is possible. But aside from inducing the placebo effect, watching a mind movie can actually help you motivate too, because it's a really good way of staying in touch with your values. That's why I had a visualization scripting exercise in Get It Done, the quarterly productivity planner that I recently came out with, because I want you to be able to visualize success in your mind's eye and come back to it every time you're feeling unmotivated so that you can remember what you're doing this for, what you're putting in the little building blocks for, so that in the long run, you can have something that you really, really want. Something else that I do to use the placebo effect to my advantage, this is kind of a strange one. I've never heard anyone talk about this before. I learn as much as I can about the health benefits of different foods that I eat on a regular basis. I really learn about the different vitamins and minerals that are in them and how they're so good for your body. And while I'm eating, I remember them. And I feel so good about myself, and I can literally feel how they're going to cause such a positive effect on different parts of my body. I have like 2 pages of like common foods that I eat and their benefits, like pomegranates, raspberries, walnuts, Greek yogurt, whole wheat cereal, tomatoes, cucumbers, sunflower seeds, bell peppers, salmon, arugula, spinach, nutritional yeast, soy milk, matcha, collagen, avocado, cilantro, mushrooms, oysters, grapes, apples, broccoli, carrots, peas, onions, garlic, turmeric, kombucha, cinnamon. I eat like 10 plus of these things per day, and I can feel it having a cumulative effect on my body and how much it's filling me with health. It makes eating so much more joyful too, because I'm like, damn, like I know this is gonna make me live so long and I'm so happy about it. Now, here's a warning. I wouldn't do this with foods that you maybe suspect, maybe have an inkling aren't that healthy. And the reason for this is I don't want you to look up what's in this stuff and find out that it's actually kind of harmful and induce the nocebo effect that way. Because if you start to freak out about, oh no, I'm not eating something super healthy, that's going to make it a lot unhealthier than just eating that thing in moderation. That can kick up the nocebo effect and orthorexia. So maybe just look up some of the fruits and vegetables that you commonly eat and look at how good they are for your body. Another way I use the placebo effect to my advantage is by a mind-body connection when I'm working out. Really visualizing the desired outcome while I'm actually performing the movement, particularly with something like strength. Really focus my attention on that particular muscle and focus my energy there, because as we know, where attention goes, energy flows. And remember the studies, when you visualize yourself performing an outcome while pairing it with exercising that body part, that's when you have the most effect. So if you want to see more gains in the gym, a really simple thing you can do is to just visualize it happening in your head as you're doing it. Also, when I take my vitamins, I try to visualize the desired benefits in my mind's eye. I try to believe that they are going to infuse me with all these nutrients that my body needs and all the different ways that it's going to positively impact my health. I'm not one of those health nuts that takes a bunch of vitamins that I don't need, that my doctor didn't prescribe. I only take a multivitamin and magnesium because that's what my doctor recommends for my particular needs. Definitely, if you're going to take supplements, ask your physician about it first. But if it's something that your physician has deemed is necessary for you, learn about the benefits of that thing and visualize it happening as you're taking the pill. And in a sense, it'll be kind of like a placebo, except more effective. Also, when I do my skincare, I try to visualize the desired benefits of the different active ingredients that I'm using, of the vitamin C, of the hyaluronic acid, of the moisturizer, of the copper peptides. I visualize the different ways in which I know scientifically these are shown to help with those different skin areas. And in a way, it's not just the active ingredients I'm putting on, it's also the placebo effect taking effect. Another way I use the placebo effect to my advantage is I believe positive things about myself. Now, this is one I'm still working on. There's still some unconscious negative beliefs about myself that I'm working to dismantle, but it is kind of like positive affirmations. I don't think it's enough to just say something that you don't believe over and over. You have to actually challenge the belief that you have currently. Yes, you do have to use mental rehearsal, meaning you have to repeat it over and over multiple times. But I think the important piece is you have to be incentivized to believe that thing. It's not enough to just say, I am worthy, I am worthy, I am worthy, if you're not in touch with your incentive for saying it. Or if you're getting a secondary gain out of having low self-worth, that's not going to be enough. You have to feel that the positive outcomes of absorbing this new positive belief about myself greatly outweigh the disadvantages of believing it, or greatly outweigh the advantages of believing this negative thing about myself. It's not enough to just say, I am worthy. You have to also deconstruct, why do I think I'm not worthy? Where is this coming from? Why is it not true? Or at the very least, why is it not helping me? Remember, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? Another way to use the placebo effect to your advantage is to deal with discomfort, particularly like physical discomfort, very hot or very cold temperatures. I'm a person that I've been very, very open about the fact that I hate the heat. I hate it with a burning fervor, ironically. But recently I've been trying something new, which is to visualize myself when I'm hot being filled up with ice. This is the opposite of something that was originally used by Tibetans in very cold mountains, where they envisioned themselves as a hot air balloon, basically being filled up with a lot of heat, also paired with a type of breathing. This is also a method that was adapted by Wim Hof, if you're familiar with the Wim Hof method. Basically, you can get yourself to be less or more hot or cold depending on how you visualize your body, depending on the belief and the intention that you have about yourself. And I recently heard about a study in which participants were told that they were going to get into just a lukewarm bath, and it turned out to be an ice bath. And their bodies actually experienced it as a lukewarm bath. They actually didn't experience it as cold. The reason I thought this was interesting was because when I get into a cold plunge, I always go into it with the mindset of, it's going to be fun. It's just tepid water. I'm just going to get in. It's going to be perfectly fine. And I actually do have a really easy time with it. You know, I don't hyperventilate. My body doesn't go into shock. It actually relaxes my body. It actually feels like my heart rate is slowing down. So I realized that I've been inadvertently using this visualization method to actually do cold plunges. And the last thing that I want to do, I haven't done it yet, is when I'm sick, I want to visualize my body fighting off the infection while I take some sort of placebo, like a cup of hot tea and honey. Because if I can visualize it and I can believe that my body is fighting off the infection, I'm willing to bet it's actually going to happen faster. So what do you think? How would you use the placebo effect to your advantage? Let me know in the comments. I'll see you soon.